Panasonic has just announced not one, but two new cameras and a new lens. The LUMIX S1 Mark II, the S1 Mark II-E, and the 24-60 f2.8 lens. In this video, we're going to cover the S1 Mark II. But don't miss my other videos released at the same time as this one on the S1 Mark II-E and the 24-60 lens. For those who followed the S1R2 launch, the new S1II and S1II-E are in the exact same body, including the new tilt monitor, although the camera's sensors are completely different. For comparison, the S1 Mark II is 20% smaller and lighter than its predecessor, the original S1, Lumix's first full-frame camera introduced back in 2019. This S1 Mark II features the first partially stacked sensor from Panasonic, a sensor design that reduces rolling shutter while maintaining dynamic range. For a little more on that, I've made a dedicated video, so be sure to catch that one. It's a 24 megapixel sensor with 779-point phase detect autofocus, including a new urban sports autofocus mode, with 15 stops dynamic range with dynamic range boost enabled or 14 stops without. It features dual native ISO with base ISO in Vlog at 640 and 5000. The S1II can record video in 6K OpenGate, 3:2 aspect ratio up to 30p, 5.9K 16:9 video up to 60p, and 4K and Cinema 4K up to 120p, all full frame. At 120p it does crop slightly, 1.17x crop for Cinema 4K 120 and 1.24x crop for Ultra HD 120. It can also shoot 240p and Full HD, and that slight crop falls somewhere between the two 120p crops. It's worth noting that while this crop may seem annoying, the Nikon Z6 Mark III also crops when shooting 120p, and it crops a bunch more. The S1II includes an interesting new crop ratio called CS4K, as in CinemaScope 4K. That's C4K wide at 4096 pixels and just 1728 pixels tall, or in a 6K variation at 5952 by 2512, making a 2.4:1 crop ratio, giving you that cinematic crop straight out of camera. Plus, you can shoot up to 120p in CS4K mode, and that's without the crop found on 4K 120p. And of course, it does all of this with up to 8 stops image stabilization. One of my favorite new features is timecode support over Bluetooth. I'm making a dedicated video for that, so be sure to check that out. I love shooting with timecode, so this is a really big deal. The camera supports, finally, native UVC over USB. In other words, webcam mode. Your S1II can be your webcam for Zoom calls with just a USB cable. Another interesting new feature is that you can now move or copy files between the SD, CF Express Type B, and external SSD drives. It supports RAW over HDMI for both ProRes RAW to Atomos and Blackmagic RAW to Blackmagic recorders. Updates required for the recording hardware, which we don't have yet, so I couldn't test, but it's all coming. According to the specs though, we'll have support for 6K 30p 3:2 ratio OpenGate, 5.6K 60p, which I think will be 16:9, and Cinema 4K 120p 17:9 pixel for pixel mode, all in RAW. Plus, you get internal proxy generation support for every format other than 120p. This means you can shoot RAW and a proxy format simultaneously to speed up your editing workflow. It's super cool. That, I think, deserves a dedicated video once I have the recorder updates. I think it'll be especially interesting for those of us who edit in Resolve and like to shoot in ProRes RAW, for which Resolve still doesn't have native support for. For still photographers, the S1II will shoot up to 70 frames per second in continuous autofocus in electronic shutter and 10 frames per second with a blackout-free mechanical shutter, and up to 1.5 seconds of pre-burst. That's where it captures up to 1.5 seconds of photos from before you press the shutter. It's like having a built-in time machine. The S1II also now supports shooting stills to JPEG or HEIF, and when in HEIF, you can choose to shoot in SDR or HDR HLG mode like you get from your iPhone. You do need to expose differently for that, so I'll be making a dedicated video on that capability. The camera also has Godox flash validation. Details are scarce on this, but it essentially means that Godox flashes can be validated to be officially supported by Lumix cameras. Most of us have been using Godox flashes for years, so this is just a nice bump to make the support official and possibly more integrated. As with the S1R2, these cameras now offer Capture One compatibility for both raw processing and tethered shooting. The camera includes a 3-month free trial to Capture One as well. There's an interesting new white balance feature that I haven't really gotten to play with yet called AI Auto White Balance. It doesn't actually apply it while shooting, but instead you reprocess the raw photo in camera with AI Auto White Balance enabled. Once I check it out, I may do a dedicated video on it. It sounds interesting, albeit a bit tedious to process each photo in camera. We'll see. There are already firmware updates planned. The first will include multiple frame markers. That's the feature where you can see framing guides for, let's say, both 16:9 and 9:16 simultaneously while shooting in a format like OpenGate. Currently, the camera can only show one frame marker at a time, so being able to show both will come soon. Bluetooth support for DJI gimbals will be coming as well, which means you'll no longer need a USB cable between your Lumix and your Ronin. Plus, support for ARRILOG C3 will come in a paid software update. There's also a battery grip for this camera, providing an additional battery and buttons for shooting vertically. You can choose to close the carbon fiber shutter blades when powering down the camera, a feature introduced in the S1R2. It shoots 96 megapixel photos in sensor shift high resolution mode. The S1II shoots ProRes and ProRes RAW internally, uses SD and CF Express Type B cards, and can capture 32-bit float audio and 4-channel audio with the XLR2 adapter. It has front and rear tally lights, along with a red frame record indicator on the LCD, so there's no question if you're rolling or not. You get waveform and vector scope and false color, shutter angle and synchroscan, anamorphic D-squeeze preview, the new Cinelike A2 color profile, true 24p in addition to 2398, and of course all frame rates for NTSC and PAL frequencies. You have S&Q or slow and quick mode for in-camera slow or fast motion, as well as live view composite, time-lapse, onion skin, and stop motion capabilities. It supports real-time LUT with the Lumix Lab app and the new Lumix Flow app for storyboarding and for using your smartphone as an external camera monitor. It has internal proxy generation, Frame I/O integration, and built-in Wi-Fi or USB tethered RTMP-S live streaming. It has full-size HDMI and 10 gigabit USB-C that supports PD power or recording to external SSD drives. Microphone and headphone jacks all covered behind individual doors for maximum protection. User-selectable active cooling modes, a ton of massively customizable buttons, is dust and splash and freeze resistant, is rated for temperatures from -10 degrees Celsius or 14 Fahrenheit up to 40 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit, although we all know the camera works great well beyond that, and just, well, all the features you've come to love from Lumix. All of this comes in at $31.99, available June 16th, 2025. Here's a playlist of all of my S1II and S1IIe related videos. Click here next to be sure you catch them all.